The knowledge base of what we do in medicine needs to have advanced to the point where you understand what a cell secretes, how cells communicate, and what growth factors are, and what an exosome is, and the different types of things. The medical industry as a whole, and in particular, I think big pharma, realized very early on that cell therapy was the way the human body works, and they had to get ahead of the narrative before the science of using your cells to help you heal got kind of out of control. All right, so I want to welcome everyone to the Zero Downside podcast, and I'm thrilled today because I have two cowboys at the table with me, and
let's go.
Anytime I'm surrounded by orange, I'm usually pretty happy. Side note, yesterday was a pretty amazing day because not only did we have another physician, so anyone that doesn't know, and I'm sure anyone that's watching this knows, I went to Oklahoma State, college, grad school, med school. Dr. Phillips, my functional med guy, went to Oklahoma State, college, med school. Dr. Stanton, the anesthesiologist we work a lot with, went to college at Oklahoma State. And yesterday we're treating which I didn't even know. We're treating someone from Oklahoma, the first patient day, Oklahoma State fan. I walk in with my orange shoes and he's like, "Oh, go Pokes." I'm like, "You're a cowboy?" So the next patient, lady in her 70s from New Mexico, and we're talking about you. Actually, I was like, "Man, I'm excited for him. Like, this is gonna be a great year." And she goes, "You like OSU?" And I went, "Yeah, more than a little." And she goes, "That's where I went. I graduated in like '79." I'm like, "No kidding." So it was a good day to be a cowboy yesterday in the clinic, and I didn't even know that. So, but I want to welcome. This is a last minute arrangement because I begged them to come on because they've both have some pretty significant experiences with non-traditional medicine, and even as a traditional surgeon, I think it's important that I didn't know Western medicine doesn't have all the answers. They control the narrative. And so everyone, that may be all you can find out about, right? It's not easy to find out about what you guys know, right? Even on the peptide side, Google, Bing, and Yahoo can tell you, right? On the stem cell side, I can use the word stem cell as evidenced by this podcast. I won't say I didn't know what shadow banning was, but it'll show 100 views, and on the server there's hundreds of views, and it says 1.45K subscribers or whatever, and then there's 20,000 people on TikTok following the page that say they subscribe, and you're like, which one of those is real, right? So YouTube, Instagram, like my Instagram page got you can't promote it, and we're at like 5,000 something followers, but we got shadow banned because they labeled it medical misinformation. And all it was Milan saying that she's seen hundreds of people in the clinic that since she was a little girl, like watching people get better. That's not medical misinformation, right? Like talking about the bone marrow catheter, that episode gets drawn off, and so Instagram bans us. There's nothing, the bone marrow catheter, it is my patent. Like we did the 1099 filing on it. I wrote that up on a napkin and it turned into a thing. I don't know how much more intimately involved in the development of the process you can get than that. Right. But I would think that if anyone could label it misinformation, it should be me, or there should be 5 or 6 people. And that's my argument with them is like, there's 5 or 6 people that could disagree with me. I'll call them. Like I have those guys' number. Like who was it? It's not another doctor. It's it's someone that doesn't like the word stem cell or peptides or wellness or holistic or regenerative or anything that doesn't say sponsored by Pfizer, SmithKline Beecham.
Anything natural.
Like it doesn't have a code or so. Anyway, first things first. It's August.
Football time.
We're so close. Even the 11-year-old. On Saturday, she's like, "Dad, football season is in 2 weeks, 2 Saturdays from now." I'm like, "I love you. You're absolutely my daughter for sure, right?" how excited are you guys about this year? Everyone on the for those of you who don't know, I'm pretty sure most people will. Preston Wilson, number 74, is in my mind the stalwart of an offensive line, just because over the last 5 years I've seen him play in every position on the front line. I think there was one game that I saw you snap the ball, move to guard, and at one point on a play when you were pulling both the guard and tackle, you were lined up on the outside. That's the Swiss Army knife of being a lineman, right? And because you have good footwork, you have great hand speed, and I like watching you work up front, because that's the real difference. That wasn't something that when I was playing football, it wasn't about your hand speed and your contact. It was just about blocking up a hole and plugging up a guy. You guys now getting your hands on someone, keeping your hand speed up front, getting your leverage, working on your footwork, and now you're in year 7? 6, and back, right? And everyone's back. And you blocked for a Doak Walker Award winner last year, and a 10-win team last year, and a Big 12 championship game last year, and a big bowl win against someone who used to be a kind of cool rival to have in the Big 12 and left. First, take a bask in the glory of last year for a minute, because ending up the season with 10 wins, a Big 12 championship game, and a bowl game win, like, tie a bow on last year for me. Like, best part of last year.
Man, last year was a great year. Got to see a lot of success from many different parts of the field. Many different guys got to play. Guys had to fight through adversity. At the beginning of the year, people kind of doubted us for a little bit. We had to fight through adversity. Took a tough L at the beginning of the year that kind of make a lot of people wonder what was going to happen. So it took a lot of guys stepping up and knowing that we have the team to do this, and we have the team to turn it around and make great things happen. So it took a lot of great leaders, and then ultimately we just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. Didn't finish exactly how we wanted to. We'd love to have been the champs of that last game, but just making it there after the season we had was great. Kind of fuels the fire going into this year, though. It leaves a little bad taste in the mouth. It stinks. It stinks to talk about.
It's
I've lost
amazing
two.
that you can have any bad taste in the mouth after the season you guys had last year, but I get it, right? Like, I was at that game,
right,
and it was hard.
It was tough.
Very
It was hard. That was a hard loss. But the best part, the thing that I admired most about you guys last year, and when I talk about, if I say the word kid, just know it's because I'm an old man. Because I know you're not a kid. You're a grown-ass man. But, at 60, you're like, yeah, you kids did great last year. It's not derogatory. But the way you guys, like, that's like a classic Gundy thing, right? It was like the cowboy way. Right? Like, look at each other, hold each other accountable, and know that the outside world really doesn't get to determine what happens. Like, it's very stoic. Like, we talk about the book all the time, the As a Man Thinketh, the James Allen book. Like 14, he says that situations and circumstances do not determine outcomes. Ultimately, you determine outcome. Last year was the best example of that ever, because you guys took it was a hard beginning to a season, but it was really about, it wasn't even about individual talent coming together. It was literally about a team. Like, you guys played as a team. The locker room held together. For the locker room not to fall apart, because it could have turned into a bunch of blaming and finger pointing, right? And you guys didn't. Like, that was the most impressive part to me, is coming back. Adversity is everyone. Nothing's perfect,
right?
Ever. It's how you handle it. And what you guys did last year it had to feel good, right? Because you've had seasons
absolutely
at that school a few years ago where that wasn't what happened.
Exactly.
Right? A little bit of adversity and guys, there wasn't a team.
Yeah. Guys split up.
Not last year, right? And even Gundy, I think even you could even see he had probably more fun last year, even with the start, than it looked like he's had in a long time, right? I mean, I think being in that locker room with that group of guys, as evidenced by the fact that a lot of guys came back that had a lot of other choices, right? I mean, you're going to be, we talked yesterday, I think one of the coolest things in the world is you're going to be one of the very few people in the world that's been to 6 bowl games, right?
Right.
That's, I hate the whole COVID narrative, and I got to be careful even saying it because this whole episode will be down. But
Right.
we lived through that giant situation that was created. But for you to get that extra time and for being able to come back with this group of guys, which you guys look pretty tight, especially and it's not just positionally, right? Like usually the linemen kind of hang out,
Right.
the receivers kind of have the room, right? But it kind of feels like that you guys have pretty cohesive, even between offense and defensive players this year, which is really uncommon.
That's true. We've got a lot of guys that are real tight. I think what we've tried to do a good job of is like getting to know somebody new. I think we've kind of changed the way things were in the past. We don't really do the whole freshman hazing and all that nonsense. That type of stuff. We kind of just brought guys in along and tried to teach them and tried to establish a program so when we're gone that, Coach Gundy kind of told us, and all the other guys that have played here before, they're kind of like, when you leave here, like, it's going to mean that much to you, like, to see those guys do good. Like, you want to see your school do good. And I think that everybody knew that, like, we just need to step up. We need to change the way we're doing things. And not necessarily that we had gotten off track, but we did in 2022. Guys had bad attitudes. Guys were blaming each other. Guys were dipping in and out and weren't really committed to the program, weren't committed to each other. So that whole offseason after that year took a bunch of guys just knowing that, hey, we're going to join together. We're going to buy into what Coach says.
I remember feeling at one point, I'm not to interrupt because I want you to finish the thought, but I remember feeling at one point the panic of some of those guys leaving and then talking to you and you saying, dude, like it's the best thing to happen. Like the people that didn't want to be here need to go.
Right.
And everyone that's here now wants to be here, and the difference is exponential. And I just remember thinking, wow, that's a way better to look at it than the way I'm looking at it from the outside of, oh, we're losing this guy. That, like, if you don't want to be here, you can't be part of it, right?
Exactly.
And look what they missed out on. Like,
we knew what we had. The guys that stayed knew what we had. We knew the potential we had, and we knew that we believed in our coaches. We believed in our strength staff. We believed that the guys we had now and that they would be able to bring in more to help us. We knew that, like you said, they didn't want to be here, then leave. We did lose some talent. I'm not going to say those guys that left weren't talented because they're great football players, but clearly they didn't want to be Cowboys. So we brought in a bunch of guys that do want to be Cowboys, and we've meshed well. Offense gets along with defense. Guys are hanging out on both sides of the ball. Coach Gundy also does something now where it's like after practice, he'll call on somebody random and we'll be like, who did you talk to today that's new, that you don't know? And you have to get up and say somebody's name and say one or two things about him. And if you don't, we'll run gassers. Like if you don't talk to somebody,
so there's some effort being made.
Oh yeah,
right? Yeah.
Like guys are adamant about getting to know guys now, and I'll say it is kind of cool. At first I was not hesitant, but it's just like one more thing to do.
Yeah, I got enough shit on my plate, Coach.
And then you start talking with guys and start meeting guys, and you're like, man, these guys are real good guys. You want to learn more about your teammates, and then you start playing with them and you learn more things about them, and you're like, man, I want to fight for this guy. Coach Dickey does something that we call it our whys. And so we present in front of the whole unit, like, what is your why? Why do you get up every day and do what you do? Because this isn't easy. Like, what's going to push you to keep going on the hard days? And then you kind of get up and share something that made you stronger as a man. So you kind of share something vulnerable that you don't share with everybody. And I've enjoyed that because it's made us closer with guys. And then when you're out there in the heat of the battle and it's the fourth quarter and you're dying and you know that guy's got your back just like you got his. It's just, I feel like the bond's been different these past 2 years.
Yeah, I'm tingly right now, right? Like, I mean, I don't know anyone that's ever been involved in a team sport that as they age out of that or get surgery out of it, that doesn't, when you hear someone that's actively in the fray talk about the passion involved in the locker room, like that's what you're going to miss. Like you're going to miss some game day stuff for sure. The thing you're going to miss when you go on to the next level or when you're in a boardroom someday is looking at the guys next to you. Gundy says all the time about, and I've adequately illustrated what a Gundy apologist I am. So if someone doesn't like Gundy, then you don't understand.
Then they can kick
like
it.
You just don't get it.
Yeah,
right? Like,
he's the man.
Like, let me just say right now, he's the man. He's 50 now, right? Like he's been the man since he was 40. And that was my ringtone forever. And it even came up. Here's how bad my search algorithm is now. The Justin Bieber, like Gundy changing his ringtone to Justin Bieber because Justin had the Gundy ringtone. That comes up on my feed as a video on YouTube like once a month. Right, like I'm pretty sure I'm the only one that's seen that video in the last 5 years.
I must have missed that.
Yeah, I'm the only because Justin Bieber played the ringtone, and he was like a kid, right? And Gundy changed his ringtone. So if you don't understand what Gundy's done for Oklahoma State, or you think there's any other options, you can flip off this podcast, like because I don't think you get it, right? I think that having been at Oklahoma State for over 45 years, I think that the people that have seen that program grow know that, especially with Stillwater, it's about the Cowboy way. Right? Like it's a team approach, and Gundy wins by creating a team. He's always said he doesn't need a team of 4 and 5 stars. He needs boys that want to become men and want to be able to look at the guy next to you and know sometimes you're not doing it for you, you're doing it for that guy, right? And holding each other accountable. And that, for me, win or lose, right? Like, do I live and die on the end of a game? Well, of course I do, right? But is that the most important part of the football season to me? Absolutely not, right? Like, watching you guys develop, seeing what happens to you at the next level, watching you go forward, being able to feel a part of that atmosphere still. And I've told you last time, I think we talked one time, that you'll find out at some point you're going to be an old man. You're going to look back and think, like, you guys week to week, you don't live and die on the loss because you have to play next week too. As an alumni, it will affect you way more than it does while you're actively doing it. And you would think it would be exactly opposite, 100%, right? Like the players are way more involved week to week, and oh my God, they must be dying this week because they lost, but they didn't cover the spread. Like, those kids don't even know the spread, right? They got another game next week. Like, you guys have moved. You're watching film on the next game on Sunday, right? Like, you're not worried about, like, right. You guys got to get past it. It's like in my heart, like when someone throws an interception, I want it to destroy him. But wait a minute. I don't want it to affect your next pass, right? It's like a bad golf shot. You got to let it go, or you have a bad hole. And if you have a bad hole, you can have a bad round. Or you can shank it and go, and so, but it will affect you at some point at a much deeper level, and you're going to look back and go, you would think that while you're the one on the field, you're the most vested in it. And kind of, right? But know that a bunch of people are living and dying on every time you come off line of scrimmage, right? And that's it. I don't think a lot of kids realize it at the time, but you will later on, and it will be the most special thing about your experience. You won't even remember. You will remember a great season, but you won't remember individual. Like, the seasons won't stand out as much as the relationships.
Me and his mom were talking yesterday because we were like, football season's back, like the emotion each week is like another just like anxious, like, and then after the game it's like you're emotionally exhausted because there's nothing we can physically do.
And you want him to be like on the same page as you sometimes, right?
And I'm like, he's just over it. He gets home and he's like ready to chill. And I'm like, I'm still so like emotionally just like, I don't know, drained.
I still have my kids talking to me about one of the fans from the other team and how crummy they were to us in the stand or something, right? And the player's like, hey, they're hugging it out.
I'm like, yeah,
game
whatever.
and stuff.
I'm tired.
Like,
I'm sore.
What? No.
Right.
Yeah, it was hard. But this year, man, we can have one of the first 2-time Doak Walker Award winners.
Sure can.
And hopefully, if the Heisman isn't just the quarterback award like it's turned into, they should just, between the Davey O'Brien and all that, like, is the Heisman the best football player, or is it just quarterback? Like, hopefully this year, I think that we'll have a player in New York. I think that I can't think of a member of the offensive line right now that shouldn't be playing at some point on Sundays. I think that having a 7th-year quarterback has got to be an advantage, just to have a depth chart that has a 1 on it, right?
Yeah.
And not that I didn't agree with Gundy last year, because I don't think anyone in the first 3 games distanced themselves another from the other 2 to pick a starter either. But what's always said is if you have 3 starting quarterbacks, it means you don't have 1, right? And now we have 1. And I think that the future still looks bright behind them,
Absolutely.
which is fantastic because there's some depth. Because we've had years where we had a one who tweaked his ankle in the third play of the very first game, and the season didn't turn out so great, right? So I think that having some and being there for the summer and the spring game for you guys, and watching some of the depth chart that I'm not going to be able to see this year much, I felt stoked. Like, you got to be, like, even the guys behind you at the line, like, you guys are going to be rotating a lot of guys through, and you're judged not on a game, you're judged on the plays you're on the field, right? Like, the film is your downs. It's a pretty significant advantage to not be out there every play of every game, because if you got fresh legs,
right,
that's a lot more tape on you at a higher level than just, because there's a difference in the tape on a guy in the first quarter, the second quarter, and the fourth quarter, right? And if you've got 8 guys and you get a little bit of breather, even a play off, like, there's every week it's a game of attrition, right? Like, a lot of teams don't finish strong,
right,
because they just get worn out. And I think that it's got to feel good knowing that you're going to have some tape moments in the fourth quarter where maybe you're not 5 games in on a season with no legs left, right? Like, I'm thrilled for you guys. Like, I'm so excited.
It's great. We've got some of the most depth we've ever had at all positions. You know, if just speaking from an offensive line standpoint, we got guys in the 2 deep that have started many games here or at other places. We've got guys in the 2 deep that our whole 2 deep starting line could be a starting offensive line somewhere else at another Power 5 program. You know, we just happen to have so many guys this year. And it's exciting, though, because knowing that we do have an all 6th-year line, so when we are gone, we're just going to reload. You know, it's not a rebuild. These guys have already been ready. And we've got a bunch of young guys that are, you know, even behind them that are going to be able to compete for those spots next year that are, you know, got me fired up. I just like working with some of these guys, and, you know, especially some of those young guys, being able to pour into them and just see them grow.
I think it's a unique opportunity for you, because you guys are kind of coaches on the field too. And you've always kind of been that, because you're, you know, anyone that knows Preston knows he's a bright guy, right? And there's maybe not the stereotypical football player is someone with the academic status of Preston Wilson. But for the most part, like, I can't imagine as a young player what it's like to have a 6-year guy ahead of you that can tell you, you know, position of your feet before the start of a ball, right? The little things, because you guys are now past the generalized coaching. Like, you're not learning your position. Right. This year, you've been able to focus on kind of the subtleties and the nuances of football, right?
Right. We're perfecting the little things now. Yeah, we've already got the basics. Our starting point was so much higher in spring ball than it was the year before, just because everybody was coming back. You know, we were able to start where we left off and not have to rebuild and reload. We had everybody from the previous year. So we picked up right where we left off after the Texas Bowl and went from there, which was a great way to start.
I agree. And a bowl game is kind of a start to the new season, right? Because you guys get pretty much almost as many practices between the end of season and a bowl game as you do like in spring, right? I mean, isn't it kind of like having a second spring?
Absolutely. It's like 3 weeks of bowl prep practice. And, that, you know, honestly, that's kind of what the coaches were telling us. They were saying, you know, this is leading us into next year. This guides us into next year and kind of determines how, not necessarily how we'll do, but kind of sets the attitude for the next year, gets, you know, the recruits going for next year, gets the new guys coming in and understanding the way we do things. We don't want to come in here and slack off just because it's a reward game. It's not just a reward game. We're here to win.
No, it was literally the bowl game under Gundy, and why I think his bowl record is pretty phenomenal is because it looks like that you guys have been able to use that as kind of like a coming out party for a lot of kids, and getting some people a taste that are going to have to step it up as the guy ahead of you's leaving, right? And for me, that's sometimes been the most fun as the fan, right? Is just not knowing exactly what you're going to see, but always knowing that you guys. I've never been to a game where I've just watched you guys fall apart, right? There was never a time where it was about effort, and I think that's coaching, right? Like, if someone wants to know the difference, there's a reason someone that has some uniformity where you get to depend on some, even if you didn't like some things, if you can count on it to be the same, it's a feeling of comfort, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, the fact that we haven't had a big coaching carousel and we haven't lost a bunch of people on the lines of scrimmage and all that, like for me, just that feeling of cohesiveness as a fan, I'm stoked. What about, so I would be stupid if I didn't ask you this, because I think it's one of the most exciting parts about this next season. What about the Big 12? Like, holy shit! Like, you guys are going to Provo this year.
Yeah, we've added a lot of new teams. It's exciting to get to play the new teams we didn't get to play last year.
First time in Utah, right?
Right.
Like I don't think our squad has ever played in Provo. Like,
so Utah will come to us this year.
Yeah, so I know.
And then we'll
as
go
far as
to
BYU, I don't think you guys. I
then-
don't think our team has ever played in that stadium.
Yeah, no,
Right.
I don't think we have either.
And I think there was one time in, like, before last year, I think it was like 1925 or something that we played BYU. But you're playing an away game on a Friday night at BYU. I mean, that's a pretty
a big deal.
historic place,
cool place
for you guys, right? Like, I'm so stoked about going to that game. Like, and I don't travel. I don't go to all the away games. Yeah, I don't go to Kansas a lot. Put it that way.
Yeah.
But this year, I'm definitely going to Utah, right? And then you get the Utes at home. And not to spill the beans on what my picks are for the championship series, but I would not be surprised if in December you guys aren't replaying that game against Utah. And I think that I'm not as vested necessarily in that first game, just in case things don't go the way. But I will tell you that I don't think there's any chance that, with having a team that will now be in Arlington, I think, for its third time in the last 5 years, that it's not going to change the outcome of that game. And I think that a lot of casual fans have been kind of brought back in by so many different teams in the mix. Colorado's back.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I was at Oklahoma State, it was the Big 8.
Yeah.
Colorado was there. It was a crummy football field. It was like, you know, but before that, like in the 70s, Chuck Fairbank, they had some history. But in the 80s, Colorado wasn't what with Prime it is now, right? But you guys get to go against Prime in the last game of the season. You get Utah at home. You get to travel BYU. TCU's on the schedule again. Like last year, you didn't get to play TCU.
Right. Didn't get to play TCU or Tech. Get to play both of them.
You get Tech at home.
Tech at home versus brother.
How's that going to feel? Like,
Senior
That's
day
exciting.
too.
Senior day at home,
Against little bro.
getting to play little bro. It's really exciting. You know, I've always wanted to be on the same field and play on the same field as my brother. We thought we were going to get to make it happen in high school. You know, it was first round of the playoffs. He got pulled up to varsity, and you know, I asked Coach if he'd put us on the field together at the same time, and he said no, unfortunately. You know, so I thought it would never happen. You know, I was like just hoping that, I knew he was Division I worthy and he would go play ball, but we just didn't know where. You know, I didn't know where he was going to go, so we didn't know if it was a possibility. And you know, God made it happen, and it's really exciting. All of our grandparents will be there, family,
of bellwether
friends.
moments this year.
There's
right?
a lot of big time
Right,
moments.
like last year with UCF. I mean, there's. It seems like, and that's the difference between college and pro football. There's a lot more stories in college football, right?
Right.
Pro is just a different city. It's the same cities every year. This season, though, and with the expansion of the Big 12, and God bless the new administrators in the Big 12, and with Coach and with Gundy, because he genuinely looks like he's kind of excited by it too, right? I mean, I know that you've got to get tired of playing the same team over and over, because it's just kind of, especially if the coaches don't change, because you know what their philosophy is going to be coming in. But this year, you're playing a team that hasn't lost in 3 years. You're playing a coach that's never lost at the collegiate level against a quarterback that went undefeated, and I was hoping was going into the pros before he came this year. So you guys start out under fire, right?
Right.
I mean, South Dakota State's not a sleeping team. Like,
Absolutely
and
not.
surely you guys, like, I can't imagine that just because they're FCS that you guys haven't paid attention.
Oh, trust
to the
me.
fact that they won 15 games last year.
Yeah, these
like,
practices, I'll tell you, we're no sleeping on them. We know, we respect them. We know that they're a great team, and we know we got to come to play.
First, I can't imagine how long ago that schedule was made for it to play out like this. But I can't imagine if I was making that schedule last year that would have been the FCS team I picked to open up at. Especially Iowa finished in the top 5 year before last, and South Dakota State took them 7-3, and pretty they're for real.
Yeah,
right.
They come to play.
So, and then you guys get an SEC opponent.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of kids from your high school go to Arkansas, right?
Right.
Like there's a lot of Texans in Arkansas. So I know that Argyle High, little shout out for you. I know you got to have some friends at Arkansas that are going to be wearing red at that game.
Absolutely. I've got quite a few friends. We've already talked about it. They're going to be there and going to come. They'll be wearing orange though. Yeah. They're homies.
Yeah,
they're homies. They're putting their school aside for their homie.
Well, I wanted to make sure we got some of the football talk out of the way because I don't get to geek out on football very often. Not at the level that I get to talk with someone that's going to be on the field. So I will be in my seats. Our tailgate is on the north side of Spears, so it'll have the podcast sign on it.
Heck
hopefully,
yeah. We'll give him a point on the walk.
There we go.
What's up, man?
Yeah. So
when
Preston comes by on the walk, my 11-year-old is always like wearing a jersey and hug worthy for sure. So I can't wait to run into you guys in Stillwater.
It's gonna be fun.
It's gonna be a great year.
One more week.
I want to talk now. We'll get down to why we have this podcast. That was for me, everyone. If you turning in, thank you for I appreciate it because that was for me, and I appreciate it. But I think that it's going to resonate with a lot of people just feeling the passion of college sports and competition, right? Like you can see with the way you talk about your teammates that it's a special situation. Injury wise. Like a lot about having to seek care outside of a Western medicine approach.
Absolutely.
Right. And a lot of what's happened to you, Western medicine's conservative, from a conservative or aggressive approach, either anywhere on that flow chart, as someone who's been in charge of that flow chart for a really long time, I can't think of any of the things we've done to you with some of the injuries you've been through that if I had stayed in that flow chart, I would have been able to get you back on the field with as little downtime as we've been able to with your willingness to step outside of what the narrative was.
Right, absolutely. Coming to see Doc was one of the best decisions I've made as far as, taking care of my body. I faced quite a few injuries here at Oklahoma State. One of them being, we'll start with the first one. The first time I came to see you was I tore my labrum, Fiesta Bowl year. Finished out the year with that. And then,
after a big win against Notre Dame.
After a big win. largest comeback in school history. Make sure we say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I knew I had a few options, as I was winding down the season, and then I was kind of deciding as to what I was going to do. Talking back and forth with our training staff. We have great training staff. And
one of the best strength coaches, arguably, certainly in the Big 12, but probably in college football.
Absolutely,
Legend,
Coach Glass, legend. I can't say enough good things about him and what he's done for me. Coach Glass has really transformed my body, and he's really helped me become a better football player. So after the season, I had to decide what I was going to do. I went home, talked with my family, and I kind of decided I really didn't want to go the school route. I had already kind of made my mind up on that just by previous researches and looking at old guys' injuries.
Talked to a lot of guys who've been through the same injury,
right? Talked to several,
and a lot of them maybe didn't have that great of a recovery, right?
They, the recovery time and the way they recovered, and just the overall success rate after a year or two just didn't look as strong as I wanted it to be. I knew that I wanted to play football for a long time. I knew that one day I wanted to have healthy shoulders. I wanted to be able to throw the ball with my kid. I wanted to have a life after football too, and I wanted to be healthy, but ultimately I wanted to be a football player for a long time. So, I went and met with Doc, and he told me, just about the process and the stem cells and what we might be able to do and accomplish. And so, we did the surgery, and things went great. I was able to, everybody else that had that labrum surgery, there was 4, 5, 6 other guys that same year that tore their labrums, and they got their surgery right after the season. They got it done right before me, and they were back. let's say they were, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks along, and I was 2 weeks along. I was way further along in the process than they were. I was looking at them, and they were, everybody was in their slings, and I took mine out of my sling. They're like, "You just got your surgery. What are you doing?" Well, I can do that. You can't.
Yeah.
I was like, I can do this. And I lifted my head above my arm above my head, and everybody was like, "What are you doing?
You're not supposed to be
doing that." And I was like, "Well, no, I did a different route." I was like, I did more research. I told all of you guys what I was going to do. I went with Dr. McKenna, and I did stem cells. And, fast forward a little bit, I was working out, and I think it was a year or 2 years later, and I was doing dumbbell bench press, and I was like, man, this left shoulder I feel like I'm just shooting this weight up faster than my right. And I was like, my left shoulder is now stronger than my right shoulder. And
which doesn't look, it's not that the surgery is any different.
Mm-hmm.
It's the application of cellular volume at the time of surgery is the difference. And I'm pretty sure that what I did through the scope is exactly what the other guy did through the scope. Mm-hmm. But unlike most of Western medicine, I'm not counting on me to do everything. I have to help your body do a better job of overcoming what we did to you, because surgery you still have to heal. So when someone says, "I don't believe in cells," I'm always like, okay, well, if I just do the surgery, what is the thing in your body, cells, that are going to help you heal, right? But I can take them, concentrate, and put them where they go. It's a dramatic difference. What's published with rotator cuff is, if you just do the surgery, a third of the time at 6 months, it's not healed. And it doesn't get better than that. At 10 years, it's only 40% are still healed. Same surgeon, same hospital, half with cells, half without, 2002 to 2005. The ones with cells, at 6 months, 100% were healed. At 10-year follow-up, which was published a decade ago, at 10-year follow-up, it's if you use cells, 87% are healed on MRI. If you didn't, only 40%. Do I think that I would love to take the credit for how much better a patient does with cells after surgery and say, well, I just do it different. But it's not me. It's you, right? So it's the way those cells were designed. It's the human body's pathophysiologic response to healing. Is there a way to alter that? Yes. With you, we've even come farther than that now, right? Because now there has been some times, and I'm not the one that thought of this, patients thought of it, because my first line was, well, if I do surgery, I can do this. And then finally, sometimes there'll be patients that are like, hey, I did so well with this. What if we skipped the surgery and just went to the cells? And at first, my feelings may not have been that enthusiastic about some of that, because I have trust issues, even with the human body, right? I think that if I do something to tilt the scale in our favor, maybe I can help you with surgery more than just the cells could have. That is probably not the case, right? There's a lot of things, especially with partial thickness tears, sprains, strains, inflammatory overloads, small fractures, ligament tears, that if I just give your body the resource management tools it needs, your body's going to have to heal that up with or without a stitch in it. So sometimes the devascularization that comes with getting a stitch in it may not have been really an advantage when there's a little bit of downtime after I cut on you. And when I've just put cells in you, I mean, for the great, even with the shoulder, I don't immobilize people longer 2 weeks, because atrophy is bad and scar tissue is not the goal of surgery. Healing tissue is. You don't need to not move it to heal. The body knows how to heal, and it knows that if it's under stress, it heals a little better. So my job with you is always, let's run through. You run through the list for me, because I think I put cells in at least
about everywhere.
Yeah.
At least 6 or 7 different parts of your body at this point, right?
So after, the shoulder and all that, I was already hooked. I was like, okay, if anything, hopefully nothing ever happens again, but if it does, I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm going. So, fast forward to 2022, we were playing Texas Tech, and I get my ankle rolled up on, and I tear 2 ligaments in my ankle, thinking that that's going to end my season. I'm upset about it. They cast me up. I was like, what do I do? Got my MRI, saw the tears, and I was like, okay. So I called Doc. I called you. And he was like, cut the cast off immediately and come see me. So,
Well, let's not wait. I might have said we need to get you out of your immobilization. Maybe immobilizing
Something
it
like
hurts
that.
blood supply and swelling, and I don't want you to
Right.
swell up and be too stiff. But there's only one way to do that.
right.
So,
So
yeah.
we cut that boy off, and I went straight to doc. And we injected it with cells. And at that point, I had already, so we injected
I
it.
think we got you in a cold pump,
We did.
got you moving it, got you provisionally kind of stabilized but not immobilized, getting you moving, cold pump, inject it. How long were you off? Because you had a high ankle sprain
Right. So I sat out that week that we injected, and then that next week I was playing.
on the field.
So yeah, we injected that. It was like 2 days before that game day, so I missed that game, and then that next week I was back on the field. And
Yeah, I probably
finished out
couldn't have
the
done
year.
that for you, right? Like I'm pretty sure that I'm obviously feel like I'm pretty well qualified as a surgeon, done all the right training, did a fellowship in trauma, but if I sew that back together, I'm not letting you play the next week. By not sewing you back together,
mhm.
the phone call I get from you was, "Hey, it feels better. Like it's not really swollen. I can put weight on it. What do you think?" And I'm like, how's it feel when you do stuff? I said, well, let's get you back. Let's slowly work back into doing things. 2 days later, I get the call. I'm ready to go. Like it's not really swollen. I've got a little I got a little splint on I'm going to wear. Can I go? I was like, dude, if it feels good, it's not, you playing is not going to hurt it any more than it would have. And the cells, if you're starting to scar in a little bit, if the healing has started, you're not really inflamed, and the bruising's better, and you get your motion back, you're not going to mess it up. If it hurts too much, you won't be able to go. But if you can play through it and you can play through the pain, you're not going to mess it up. And you did. And 3 games later, I don't even think we were talking about your ankle anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was kind of I thought it was going to be, I thought it could have potentially been season ending for you.
Right.
And was just heartbroken because I knew how much hard work you'd put in the off season, and I watched everything you went through to get your body where it was. And to be able to watch you get back on the field, like I'm more impressed with what the human body's capable of every day. And I think that was one of those moments for me. Then elbow?
Yes. So that same year, in bowl prep, I fractured my elbow. So once again, I knew immediately where to go after the season and called up doc. And at this point, I was like, okay, this is my 3rd time in here, and I'm like, I'm going to do some preventative stuff too.
Yeah, where else do I hurt, right?
Right. So I was like, I've been playing football for a long time. There's wear and tear. So we did my other ankle that time. We did the elbow, and then we ended up doing my right shoulder
Yep.
as a preventative.
But yeah, because you were having some tendonitis and you were already having that biceps kind of, and I knew you already had that on the other side.
Right.
And you're like, this feels kind of like it did before. C-arm, little die, like you were already asleep.
Right.
Like, if I'm asleep, make hay, right? Like,
Yeah.
Now, if I'm going to be awake while
Yeah.
you put that
Yeah.
2.5-inch needle right in the middle of that tendon, it needs to hurt a lot
Yeah.
to make that worthwhile. You've done that. I've injected you awake on that back table,
Yep.
and you've done great because you're a man, and you're not 40. But man, with some of those injections we've done, being asleep is good, right? So especially without coming out with a bunch of stitches and scars on you.
Right.
You did great. I think honestly, like I don't want to get from an NFL perspective, did you look better on film and MRI now than anyone that's had the surgery on those areas? You don't have a lot of scar. You don't have a bunch of surgical incisions. Like you're not always going to have a weak deltoid because you had a big, 3 shoulder surgeries. You're not gonna. Like your deltoid is massive. The biceps doesn't look all frayed out like it's going to pop someday. It looks on MRI, it looks homogenetic, meaning it's all nice, thick, and black and healthy. That's really uncommon. If I would have put you through all the traditional approaches, I can get it to look intact, but you can't get it to look healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And MRI shows health of the tissue. And so every time I see you for something different, or you tweak a ligament here and there, I'm always amazed at how the tissue around it looks because you've done such a good job on the nutrition, on the exercise protocols, like body by glass, right? But I've been a big fan of watching. First of all, you being brave enough to step out, because I think it takes a little bit, especially in your age group. The average athlete that comes to see me, 10 years ago, it was some guy after their career because they're broken. And they're coming to me because they just don't want to hurt all the time. Like they're trying to not have a total knee or not have a total shoulder or not have their third back surgery. It's gotten younger and younger because now if someone's just going to throw surgery at you and that's going to take some time off the field or alter your ability. I think people in your age group understand exactly what you said a minute ago. I want to be able to throw the ball with my kids someday. Like I want to play. I want to have a long career. But I don't want to not be able to throw the football in my 40s, right? Right. And I don't think that, I think that's I think that the taking care of your body and understanding that when you're on the field, you're going to throw it around with reckless regard. And you want the freedom to do that without worrying about the repercussions of it, right? The guys that are on the field that are tentative, that are afraid to throw their body around because they're worried about getting hurt, that's a bad way to play football, right? If you feel good and you feel intact and you can just have reckless disregard for getting hurt, knowing that I can get the inflammatory load to go away and get you better, I think that it frees you up more than makes you tentative, right? The guys that are worried about their third surgery and the amount of scar tissue you have, that's what makes someone tentative.
Right.
Not when you're intact, right? And Genny talks about that all the time. Like we had the discussion a minute ago about natural talent and heart and physical ability. And at your level, you need both, right? But it takes a lot to have both, right? Having heart and not having physical ability sometimes just saddens me, right? But to see someone with physical ability and no heart saddens me way worse. And because the athlete takes both. Because there are times where no matter how in shape you are, no matter how fast you are, you just feel like not doing it. Right? And it's hard to, well, in your case, get out and lift that weight again, right? Especially when you're talking about when your sport is literally trying to destroy muscle to make it bigger.
Yeah.
Right.
The times that like you have lift like through the week, you don't have off days really. You get one off day. I got one, and then you're probably still doing cardio closer to season, like prep time. And so like doing heavy legs and your lifting is heaviest, but like till failure. Every lift is still failure. So obviously, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but your muscles tear, and that's how they grow.
Absolutely, that's how it grows, right? You're building. It's kind of like creating a little bit of a scar, so your muscle mass gets bigger, right? So you're creating more myofibrils.
Doing that on Monday, and then having to wake up at 4 a.m. and do the Stairmaster for an hour. Yeah, it hurts. Yeah. It's not fun.
So first of all, the self-discipline required in the weight room was only worth it to me if I was going to be on the field. I cannot imagine, because I don't do it as an adult. Like I have buddies that, like, if they don't get their gym time every week, they're just not even pleasant to talk to. Right?
Relatable.
Right, for sure. And do I get in the gym and pound it out for an hour against weights anymore? No, because it hurts. It makes me not feel great for the day, and it takes too much time, and I don't have time for it. But if that is your sport, because that competition is all about, like, you're worried about balance and
completely.
Like, there's that in my mind now. I used to think you could pretty much just strength train through anything. I for the first time at 60 understand it's a lot more about nutrition and avoiding injury and lowering your inflammatory load and being metabolically balanced. All the things that no one teaches us in med school.
There's so much more to it than people think. Like,
no,
there's a lot of levels.
When you get guys talking about abs, I'm just like, look, abs are about nutrition.
100%.
Right. Like you're going to have to, you're going to have to cut, you're going to have to get lean, you're going to have to cut, and you do that before a competition. But it's hard to walk around with that all the time. Like you're going to have to. That
it's not sustainable.
It is the new. I tell people all the time that being lean is the new Rolex. Yeah. Right. So guys after 50, no one looked like a guy that has money after 50 or 60 or 70. I get 70-year-old guys in the office now, lean, sculpted. That is the new Rolex.
Yeah.
Right? If you really want to flex where you're at in life and being successful, being a fat guy with the Rolex and being completely out of shape and not being able to keep up with your kids and travel and fit in an airplane seat,
Right.
you're doing something wrong. Like, that's not success.
Absolutely.
Right. And now I think that I've got an 80-year-old guy that can flex out and I've done everything in the world to him because he's got a bad neck, he's had a bunch of back surgery, but with nutrition, peptide therapy, hormone control, getting him nutritionally where he's not in the ditch, man, he's back in the gym a little bit. He like that's my goal.
I was about to say that's
right?
like now my goal
That's
for life.
That's the goal, right? It's like, I want to feel good, and you're a pretty girl. I've never been a pretty person. So, but I think the goal is you want to feel good and be pretty for the rest of your life, right? I think everyone wants good skin, good hair, lean muscle mass, and to not be tired and heavy and not able to sleep, and all that.
Which unfortunately, 90% of America does.
50% of our population is either diabetic or pre-diabetic type 2.
I don't want it.
That was unheard. And Oklahoma is the fattest state in the United States. How about that?
I don't want to claim that.
How about that? How about that? Oklahoma has the highest obesity rate in the United States.
I believe it. We get some big people.
But it's not, and it's not that everything in Oklahoma has gravy, although it does. Like, if you order even if you're ordering,
Preston likes gravy.
If you're working out like you guys do, you get
Right.
some gravy,
Right. Exactly.
But it's incredibly difficult to metabolically pull someone, and everyone knows, like, the whole narrative of it's your fault you're fat is so wrong. That rate, that pre-diabetic rate, the obesity has dramatically climbed over the last 20 years. If you go back to the 70s, it was like 5 to 6% of adults. Type 2 diabetes wasn't really even a thing, right? Processed food, stress, sapping the nutrition out of our soil, not getting away from outside, getting away from sunlight, getting away from not having zinc, magnesium, there's a lot of ways that we have broken people down with insulin resistance, where I don't care if you starve yourself. You're never gonna be lean, right? And so with some of the peptide therapies, especially as an athlete, and especially trying to maintain lean muscle mass, we did a whole episode of the podcast about how important contractile muscle is because of what it secretes. We're not taught, Western medicine physicians, the one that's supposed to be the expert, right? I always hate when I have to argue with someone about, like, wearing a mask, for instance, and I'm the physician and a trauma surgeon, and I'm 60, and run a micro lab, have tissue grafts on the market, have been under a microscope a lot over the last 10 years, understand cellular volume, contamination, bacteria theory, virology, and I'm arguing with someone about something that I should know more about than them, right? In a perfect scenario.
I would think so.
But the physicians should be the experts in how to build a muscle and stay lean. And we're not. But you know who is a lot? The athlete, because they know what they've had to do it. And they know what works for them, and they're able to wade those waters. All I need to do a lot of times is give you a little bit more access to some of the resources you need to stay out of the inflammatory loop, right? Because you may not have access to certain peptide therapy. You may not have access to some of the nutritional, like, what supplement's best, or what do I need to take, or hey, I'm taking this collagen. Or the physician should educate himself up to help the athlete.
Right.
And I think because there's no code for that a lot of people are stuck kind of watching podcasts.
Well, in my case with bodybuilding, like you said, with inflammation, like, we can, and to be that successful in that, there's a lot of things you have to do. But if your body's inflamed, you're still not going to look as good as you could because it adds so much swelling and, like, all of that. So that's one of the big,
is the word I always describe. Like, lean muscle isn't boggy and inflamed and diffuse swelling, right?
Right.
That's what inflammation does to you.
Inflammation sucks.
Right. And everything's about inflammation, right? We talk a lot about, even with PCOS. So it's the PCOS is the fibromyalgia of your generation, right? So fibromyalgia was my mom's, like that was the junk diagnosis they applied to every woman over 50 who hurt. Oh, you have fibromyalgia. Really? How come that disease didn't even exist? There's no dramatic thing, but it's random trigger points and all this. Okay, so you hurt everywhere. You have systemic inflammatory load. You have a little bit of immune failure, and it's fibromyalgia. Maybe it's systemic inflammatory overload, and you're not very healthy.
Right.
Right. Now it's PCOS. So
Everyone
but you know what? It kind of is, but it's because of insulin fatigue, insulin resistance, processed foods, nutritional. Can you nutritionally take someone out of PCOS? Yeah. You got to be really stringent on keto.
Right.
You have to dietarily control your inflammatory load because sugars are the devil. If sugars are gasoline for the fire for inflammation, like sugars are bad, right? Like we say I said one time on the podcast very organically that if sugar had to go before the FDA for approval, it would not get it because it causes heart disease, diabetes, death. It causes wounds not to heal.
Addiction. It
right?
is. People are addicted.
It's absolutely
to
addicted.
Yeah.
And guess why that carbohydrate is so desirable? Because you have so much insulin being secreted in your body, it's making it where it's telling you eat the carb, right? And if you have big high insulin levels and you eat the carb, does your insulin levels drop and you burn the carbohydrate right away? No. Your body's going to break it down and store it as fat. And well, then you can just through working out burn the fat. No, because with your insulin levels up, it's never going to go into lipolysis and burn that fat. It's trying to not starve because that's what your body's meant to do is not starve. Everything you eat is going to be stored. It's going to burn it kind of like green wood. You never feel great because even if you carbo load, your body's going to burn it like green wood. It's going to use a little bit of it for the calories, and this is just going to store it as fat. And then what it's going to hit when you get that glycogen, like 30 minutes into that workout and you hit that wall, it's going to hit your muscle for glycogen stores. Because if you're not eating enough protein, if you have protein in your system, like 30 grams, 30 minutes before, 30 minutes extra, all that, 30, 30, 30, great book. If you do that, it'll hit your gut. It's going to take protein and metabolize it. And that's a really good source of energy. It's not going to, you want 6 ATP from the Krebs cycle instead of 2 protein. If you're in insulin resistance, you're going to not be able to burn the calorie very efficiently. It's going to be stored, and you're going to suck some of your muscle mass out with every one of those workouts. PCOS, infertility associated with that, is because the insulin overload kind of shuts down the ovarian feedback loop for hormones, and you can have some infertility problems. Your testosterone can, but now, and you always feel crummy.
Yes.
Because you're inflamed. So when you get someone out there, oh, they're using diabetes drugs to treat PCOS. No. You're resetting someone's insulin resistant with the peptide therapy that doesn't have to be a brand name $1,500 a month drug, because that peptide is naturally occurring in the human body, and it's not doing very well because you've hurt your body metabolically. And now I need to help you with some contractile muscle mass, which is where a lot of that peptide formation and secretion comes from. But can you overcome that nutritionally? And can I help someone with overcoming some of that? Yeah.
You said my favorite word, natural.
Yeah.
Natural. We make it.
Anything that occurs in your body, I don't think that is my intellectual property.
Right.
Drug companies claim it all the time, right? Because a lot of, and we go through research a lot, and I'll read research papers, and a lot of the scientific literature that we use to base everything we do was originally financed by a drug company to break apart the pathophysiology of the human body to find something they can patent. And so that's the reason a lot of it never turns into wellness treatment, is because someone's trying to claim intellectual property over one little peptide and say that that's the most important thing in the cycle, when sometimes it is crucial, but it's way more complicated than that in the human body. So a lot of times it's just, how do I get you healthy enough for your body to do what it's supposed to do? And when you're working out and trying to build muscle mass, that's pretty important.
It is
right?
very important.
Because if you take a week out, it's like starting over, right?
Honest, like there's just been times like we will come to Texas for something, and I'm like, I've got to go to a gym or else, and then I'm so sore the week that I go back and try to do the same weight. So
Rebound
sore.
inflammatory load.
Golly.
We talk about atrophy all the time. Like that's why I work so hard to get an athlete back in the gym and back on the field. If I leave you in a sling for 6 weeks, it's going to take you 3 months to get your normal range of motion back, let alone without pain, because now you're going to have scarred in. So the body reacts better to stress. It knows what to secrete. So if I get you under stress a little quicker, your body's reparative mechanisms can kick in a little more, right? Anyway, we did kick into, almost got to where I was throwing stuff, because that's how bad the narrative against people are. Like medicine blames all its failures on the patient. It's your fault. Really? And we don't take responsibility for the solutions we give you that don't work. Well, we did this and this for you, and you're taking these drugs, and your cholesterol should go down because we have you on all these statins. You're just eating bad.
Yeah, what are you doing wrong?
Right. Yeah. What? Like, hey, why don't you fix my carbohydrate metabolism? Why don't you talk to me about ketosis? What is the almost religious narrative against carnivore and ketotic diets? Like that's the problem with PCOS. That's the problem with insulin resistance. But if you're insulin resistant, is it really hard to not give in to that? Does your body's desire to have a carbohydrate? Yeah.
Is this going to be hard?
Right? It's difficult. Athletes do it way better than normal people because you have to exercise so much discipline to do what you do. But so before we end, because I think that the producers of our time here today would be remiss if I don't ask, and I want to give you both a chance to do it because I think your goals are a little different for both of you, is what do you know now based on your injuries and the how hard it is to train through college,
right?
How hard it is to stay an athlete on the field of play that's not 19 and in high school and eating anything you want and still doing good, right? Because you're playing other guys and you're bigger than all of them. You're not bigger than everyone anymore, right? Like everyone in the line of scrimmage is 300 pounds. And like, what do you know now that you would tell a young athlete or an older athlete that maybe didn't take as good a care of themselves as you're doing? What do you know now? What would be your hacks to kind of get through a better you?
Man, I'll definitely say it's never too early to start and never too late to get started. After having these cells done with Dr. McKenna, I've noticed so much of a change in my body. I've noticed being able to recover quicker. I've noticed I've stayed out of the training room. I haven't had to be in treatments and do all these sorts of things after I've healed from my injuries and done what Doc said and done my physical therapy. I'm 100%. These injuries don't bother me anymore. The same people that have the same surgeries as me, when they come back, they're still in the training room for the rest of their career on the same injury. Once I was cleared and healed, I don't step foot back in there again for that same injury because it's cleared. Just knowing that there's other options out there, that you don't have to go the standard way. You don't have to go the standard traditional medicine way, that there are other options out there that will get you back on the field even faster. But other people may not tell you that. You might need to do the research yourself and go meet with Doc and come talk to him. And you'll know that he has your best interest and he will do everything he can to get you back on the field, the court, or just back to your daily life activities and living a good life. Ultimately, my body's recovered and healed, and there's no other option. There's no other place I'm going. I've already told everybody that. I tell everybody what my secret is. There is no secret. I'm telling everybody this is where I go, and this is what keeps me back on the field.
Yeah. Look, I end almost every episode saying how humbled I am by the trust people have in us. But to have a patient actually express that is like, I tell people, fortunately, I've been in the right place at the right time for most of my adulthood, and I feel very blessed. But for the most part, without a patient's trust and without someone that's willing to venture out of what you're going to get on Google, Bing, and Yahoo, it's really, because the FDA doesn't control what we do. It does control commerce. But if you control the purse strings, You control the science. And for you to go outside the narrative, and now the guys at the next level in their 40s, they find out about by talking to someone else, right? Well, so-and-so went to Germany, or so-and-so did that. Yeah, but you know what they used in Germany to do that? The catheter that I developed here 20 years ago. I mean, it's like, what? But in Germany, what can they do? They can talk about it, right? In the U.S., what can we do? We can do this and talk about it. But I'm never going to come out and talk about some of the proprietary little things that we would do with tissue graft and ozone and refracted light, all the things we can use to make cells and you better, peptide therapy, because there are some easy little hacks with some peptides. You can't do any of them because you're getting, as a D1 athlete, there's like, you have about 0 options. It's zinc, magnesium, vitamin C. You can do big doses of absorbate, because if I keep your liver stocked up with absorbate and out of sorbutism, can you heal and maintain your muscle mass better? Absolutely. Is that a really easy anti-inflammatory hack with a little IV therapy with absorbate and some big doses of B vitamins? Well, yeah. Of
course.
Is there a downside to that? No.
0 downside.
Right? Like, thank you. So that's your, I think, probably 3rd time. So I didn't realize there's a college drinking game now on how many times you say downside or 0 downside. So, okay. So now on the just lean muscle mass, your whole competition, your sport is destroying a muscle to make it look bigger.
The whole thing.
Right? That is not, it doesn't sound like a very sustainable long-term plan, but yet the people I see that are healthiest in older age are all people with more lean muscle mass. Right? Contractile muscle is incredibly important. What are the little things that you know now that are going to help keep you looking like you look and being able to compete as you move forward, not as the 20-something anymore?
Right. Well, what I would say is that, like, kind of bouncing off Preston, like, it's not too late to start. Like, you don't have to be in the gym and feeling like crap after, trying to, like, it is a sport. You are an athlete. You are, I plan on doing this for a long time. And you just got to take care of your body and get your body exposed to the right things. I'm thankful and grateful enough and blessed to know you and know, someone who has the knowledge that he does to help naturally. I'm big on the natural thing. I want my body to do what it's meant to do, what we were created by God to do. So just a little boost with that, helping with that, and nutrition played a big role. And just, if you need help, this guy knows what he's doing. He's very smart.
What cracks me up about even peptide, or even about nutritional advice, like telling someone to take magnesium at night. I do not know how in the world that's controversial.
Because it's healthy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it doesn't have the right corporate sponsor.
Right.
Because we'll have patients every week come in that will make the statement that their doctor told them not to take vitamins because it just gives you expensive urine. And it makes me want to smack my head against the wall.
It just is, they don't get the expense.
Do you understand that nutrition, what you put in your body, is everything?
Oh, right? I started cooking for him, and like, he can't eat, like, we don't really eat fast food. I mean, we do, don't get us wrong. Like,
processed
every once in a while,
food is bad.
It is. It just, it makes your body feel like crap. And so
anything that you can take and put on your shelf for 2 years and still eat is probably not belonging to you.
Right. Like, why do you think?
Like, that's not a good thing.
That's not what we were meant to eat. Once you start, you can't go, like, your body cannot eat those things anymore. Your body doesn't digest those things that well anymore when you go back to eating.
It's not even meant to digest it.
No.
Right? It's meant to be an empty. The only one that donates more money to Congress than Big Pharma, and now they're all owned by Big Pharma, are processed foods, right? Because that's the narrative, right? And hell, now I think they're going to try. They're growing artificial meats, right?
Oh,
like,
my gosh!
Like, I don't even know. Like,
buy from farms.
I think that your ingredient list, like I tell people all the time. My girlfriend, we did it not the other day. We were going to get to the store, and we had a very short list because we were making dinner, and we needed butter. And my youngest runs and grabs this. I'm like, that's not butter. So look at the ingredient list. I said, the ingredient list for butter is milk and salt.
Maybe? Yeah,
right? Like, that's it. Like,
that.
What's the ingredient list for butter? Milk and salt.
Yeah.
And she's like, but Dad, look at. I'm like, no, that ain't butter. Yeah. Right? Like, check your ingredient list. Like, if we can set that in our refrigerator, if I can not refrigerate it in a plastic tub,
And it still be okay.
right? It tastes like butter. Well, that ain't the same,
Right.
right? Anyway, I don't think there's a lot of there's not a lot of ways to escape it, and I'm the worst offender ever because I mean, anyone that knows me knows that if it wasn't for some of the shortcuts, if it wasn't for turning 60, my mom passing, and my daughter turning 10 at the same time, and my 20-year-old daughter having some health issues that I knew I probably helped cause by not being the best example, if it wasn't for all those things happening at one time, I would still be focused on how everyone else feels and not worried about me.
Right.
And that's not a long-term solution, right? Like, you're not going to accomplish much if you're an inflammatory mess trying to tell other people how to get out of an inflammatory mess. And that's kind of what I had allowed to happen. So it can happen to anyone. Knowledge does not make you do it. You still have to do it. I make the joke all the time that I don't deserve nice things because I don't take care of shit, right? Like, I'll rent something. Like, I don't buy a boat. I don't have a boat because you have to take care of that.
Right.
Right. And if you don't take care of it, it's just waste of money. If you're going to take care of it, you have nice things. I don't deserve nice things. I drive an older truck. If it goes bad, I usually trade in my truck when the tires are really bad. Like, I'll get one set of tires. Like it's easier for me just to say, well, it's
Trade
all
the truck
equity.
in.
Yeah, I don't take care of stuff very much. I certainly didn't take care of me because in my mind, there's always something more important I should be doing.
Right.
I mean, I have 3 daughters that are the most important thing in my life to me, and even my daughter that's a lawyer, who I'm extremely proud of, she still demands some time. My college graduate, she demands some time. My 11-year-old absolutely deserves the time I gave my other 2.
Mm-hmm.
So there doesn't leave a lot left over when I'm taking care of 100 patients a week. But if you create a better you have a lot more to give back. And you guys doing that together. So I guess everyone knows you guys are engaged now, right?
Yes.
sir,
Congratulations.
Thank you so
you.
much.
That's a big step. Like, you're way more of a man than I was. I don't think I got engaged in for a very, 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 very long time the first time. I think it was 30. I was 30 when I got married. So you guys are doing it right because the family that works to stay healthy together, and especially with you guys having your gym time, like, to have a workout partner for life is a huge advantage over what most people have.
We're very blessed. God did his thing. Prayed for that.
God blessed me with the most beautiful,
gosh.
amazing workout
Here we
partner
go.
ever.
I'm embarrassed.
I'm excited to work out with you
Right
for the
now,
rest of my life.
That's the ultimate flex, and it needed to happen because I wanted to give Preston the opportunity to get a little swag in the bag before he leaves, and that's it right there. Guys, thank you both so much for showing up.
Doc.
I know that's
Thank you for having us.
This is last minute, and neither one of us was like, I didn't even bring a collared shirt. I'm like, dude, you got orange on, we're good. And so for me, I'm thrilled to have friends in that I get to help navigate through some of the waters, and I genuinely think of you guys like that. And I'm really proud of I'm really happy about you being on the field this year again. And I'm proud that he has someone helping watch out for him.
Oh, yeah.
And for me, I genuinely thank you so much for your trust and for showing up today. Like, this was
thank
fun
you.
for me.
Doc, thank
We
you.
couldn't
Thank
have
you
done
for
it without
having
you.
us, and thank you for everything you've done for us
Yeah.
and for me, and just keeping me healthy and getting me back safe, and ultimately just helping me achieve my goals.
I will
Keeping me
tell
on
you,
track.
Before we because listening to you talk good about me makes me embarrassed. But one of the things that was the most humbling ever happened to me is we injected cells in like every joint in your body, and you had a couple bad injuries, and it looked perfect on film. And I call you a couple weeks out. I'm like, hey, how you doing? Dude, I'm so happy. We had done some Botox treatment for sweat glands, and that's what you said most about. And I looked at Ashley, and I'm like, and she's like, how'd it work? I said, he loves it. She goes, oh, that makes me so happy. And I'm like,
The Botox.
man, like, his elbows were bad, his feet hurt. But I will tell you, so right after that conversation, I did it. I'm like, well, if he's like, I did the Botox underarm thing, best thing I ever did. So you were
Amazing.
I was so humbled that, like, I did all these stem cell advanced level of care for you, and the thing that you were happiest about was not sweating through a shirt. And I remember thinking, that can't have been the most important thing I did, but I did it that day. Like, I called out, we hung up the phone. I'm like, okay, Ashley, you're doing that to me today. So anyway, with all the cool stuff, we still have to realize that living life and being happy is what makes everything worthwhile. So thank you guys both very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doc.
All right.